have to be, to the public, must be regulated?
That's right. We learned that. Stop. We learned that businesses that are open for public use must what? Must be available for public regulation. If they are open for the public to use, then they are also open for public regulation. Did any of the Granger cases do that? Regulate them? No. The Granger cases are a loss for the Grange, but they establish that precedent of if you are going to be in the market offering a service to the public, you are therefore going to be under government regulation. Okay? All right, so that's where we ended up last time. Let's look at what happens. Because of those Granger cases, Congress gets a kick in the pants. All right? And that kick in the pants comes in 1886 with the Supreme Court case Wabash Railway versus Illinois. See, what was happening is the federal government was not regulating rail lines. So the state said, we're going to regulate them. We're going to try to step in and negotiate and force these rail lines to operate under our regulations. Because if you think about it, where in the Constitution is the right of the federal government to regulate the railways listed? Is it? They didn't even exist. Trains didn't even exist when the Constitution was written, so it's not there. All right? Under the three-step process, the three-step test that was discovered or established under McCullough versus Maryland, if it's not delegated, nor is it denied to the states, it is reserved for the states, right? Okay, so what happens is the states say, this is a power that is not denied to us, so we are going to take it upon ourselves to regulate the rail lines, the railroads. However, their authority only goes where? Only exists where? Within their states. Because once you get outside of their states, what is going to happen? You have no authority. All right? I grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard. And, the Dukes of Hazzard were allowed to go, the Bow and Loop were allowed to go anywhere in Hazzard County they wanted. But they couldn't cross the county line because there was a warrant out for their arrest. And they had a sheriff who did nothing but wait at the other county line, on the other side of the county line, to arrest Bow and Loop. Apparently there's only one county. There's only one road into that county, but he was always there. And they couldn't come over there. Because what happens? You cross over to that county, that guy has what? What is that phrase? Jurisdiction. To get them. But he can't cross over into another county. It's the same thing with states. Texas, I don't care what you saw growing up. Walker, Texas Ranger cannot go to Washington and use his Texas Ranger badge and get away scot-free arresting somebody. That's not how federalism works. All right? That's TV. So what happens here is the states, Illinois, establishes laws. That this is the laws for the railroad within our state. Okay? Problem is, Indiana's right next to Illinois. And Indiana's going to establish their own laws. So it says, this is what we are going to do. And then Ohio's right next to both of them, correct? And so they're going to establish their own rules. And what's right next to Ohio? Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania says, we're going to have our own rules. So if you are the railroad company that goes through Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, you are now subject to 4 different sets of regulations. All right? It's confusing. It is really, really, really confusing and very hard to enforce. So what happens is the Wabash Railway Corporation sues the state of Illinois for some of these regulations. The Supreme Court in 1886 agrees with the Wabash Railway. It says you are violating these rights here of this corporation. Because what happens is what occurs once that, where does that rail line end? Does it end in any of those states? it passes through, therefore it is what? It is what do we have? The big roads that go state to state today, what are they called? They're interstates. Interstate commerce. He says the states cannot pass laws affecting interstate commerce. And that is true. That's part of the Commerce Clause of our Constitution. So what happens is this is a blow to state rights because the state said, hey, this is our right to do this because the federal government is not. Therefore, we can. Now, the Supreme Court says, no, actually, you cannot because it is interstate commerce. So Congress gets a kick in their pants and says, hey, do something. And that is going to occur in 1887. And this is going to be the passage of the Interstate Commerce Act. And what this does, the Interstate Commerce Act, is it is going to establish an interstate commission, a commerce commission, that is going to be charged with making sure that several to make sure that regulations established by this commission are enforced. If a company is found in violation through their own investigation, if they're found in violation, they would be tried in federal courts. Okay? They would be tried in federal courts. Now, what type of things could be considered a violation? One of the things that was considered a violation is what is called a pool. A pool is when different companies go together and make a deal with a railroad company that says, hey, we're going to be shipping X amount of cargo per month. We want to negotiate a deal. All right? This is going to be ruled as illegal because that is not open to other individuals. A second issue that is going to come up is a rebate. And a rebate is an agreement between a person shipping their goods and the railroad company that says something to the effect of the rate from California to New York is $2,000. However, because you do this for us so often, we will, once you pay the $2,000, we will cut it back to what it really costs, about $750, and we will give you a rebate every month of $1,250.
So like a discount, basically?
Yeah, it's kind of like a discount. But here's the deal. Discounts have to be available to everyone or at a certain rate. Like your textbooks. Your textbooks are about $80 to the bookstore normally. However, because Lynn buys in bulk, we qualify for a set reduction. That set reduction, therefore, brings the price down. Now, you're like, wait a minute, I pay more than that for the book. Yeah, then the bookstore gets involved. That's the end of my really dealing with the books, okay? See, that's okay because it's a set for everyone versus just saying, hey, this is under the deal agreement for us, okay? Those are the type of things that they're going to to negotiate and try to work out. Now, it's not very effective at first. It's going to be strengthened later on, and you'll see some improvements. But it's a first start. Remember how we were talking about those trusts, those organizations? A trust is what? What does a trust do? Trust is what? Man, you guys are making me confident about the test. A trust is a company that owns what? Other companies. Okay? It only exists to own other companies. And it is a way to get around monopoly laws. What's the purpose of monopolies? Keep competition what? Monopolies do not cause competition throughout. Who's this guy right here?
That's right.
Who's this guy? The Monopoly Man. What is his goal? When you play Monopoly, what is your goal? Your goal is to get all three colors, or Park Place and Boardwalk, to get two colors, and then build hotels on it. And if you own both of them, and you build hotels, and you build houses and build hotels, you have a monopoly of those colors, and what happens? It gets more expensive. Why? Because if you're the only person that is providing a service, what you charge is what people have to pay. Okay? So what happens is these trusts were created as ways to get around state monopoly laws. And in 1890, Congress is going to pass the Sherman Antitrust Act. And it relies on the Commerce Clause. Every time Congress passes a bill, it must draw a line to the power given to them to do so in the Constitution. So what they did in 1890 is they said the Sherman Antitrust Act, from the power of the Commerce Clause, says we are going to forbid monopolies, or in places where a monopoly does not exist, perhaps it is a market in which 2 or perhaps 3 different companies control the market, but they agree to drive prices up. Okay? Competition, what happens? What's supposed to happen in competition? Drive prices down, right? Okay? But this is a secret contract or a conspiracy between 2 or more organizations, corporations, to drive the prices up. How many of you guys come into school from William Joel Bryant up here, the big road up here? Okay? Last semester, that new Raceway gas station opened up. And it had prices cheaper than the Exxon on the corner. And what happened is a price war started going between them. Raceway would set their price, and then Exxon would meet it, or would beat it. And then Raceway would drop their price, and I'd go by at lunch, and Raceway would be winning. I'd go back when I went home, and Exxon was winning. They were changing their prices like that, really quick. And then eventually what happened is it's like Exxon just said, well, I'm not going to go any lower, and I'm just going to go back to what my rates were. And the price war ended. Okay? Now, if both of those were to get together and say, hey, let's make an agreement to keep the price about $4 a gallon, that would be illegal. That would be violating fair trade, the Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, unfortunately, in 1895, most of the Sherman Antitrust Act is going to have its teeth pulled when the United States versus B.C. Knight Company, the Supreme Court, is going to rule that manufacturing items is not commerce. All right? Commerce is things being sold. All right? But making items to be sold is not necessarily commerce. Do you follow? If I was to make shoes, and I made shoes, and that was my hobby, am I engaging in commerce? Am I selling them? No, I'm just making them. Okay? Crazy habit. But if I were to sell them, then I would fall under the Anti-Sherman Trust Act. But I'm not. I'm just making it. And what was happening here is what it was aimed, the Sherman Antitrust Act is aimed to do is going to fall far short of its intended purposes. Okay? Because industry is not commerce and therefore is immune from the law. So what it was created to do, this happens all the time, things that Congress tries to do, pass laws to effect, doesn't really help it. Okay? You want a real-world example? Who can give me a real-world example? What? No, of Congress passing a law that it helps something that doesn't really help it once it's enacted. Yes, sir.
Obamacare.
Thank you. All right, you're seeing all these people who have their premiums are going up 3, 4, in some instances 100%. Okay? And it was designed to do what? Bring prices low. Why? Congress, great at making laws, but you could make a law that says thou shalt do this, and then actually doing it takes somebody a lot smarter than the people we elect to Congress. So it still occurs. during the 70s, during the 80s, of 1870s and 1880s, we're going to see a push for unionization. Now, what is a union? How many guys saw recently that Northwestern University's football players are talking about creating a union, to try to protect them from everything that happens in a football game? Abuses. You see that? It's not going to go anywhere because it's really no reason to. They're not paid for what they do, supposedly. But you're going to see a lot of problems that are going to start affecting the average laborer in the 1870s and 1880s. A lot of it has to do with the technology that we talked about last time. One of the major problems is immigration. During this time period, we are going to have a large percentage of immigrants come to the United States. And anytime you have a large group of immigrants come to the United States, it is going to cause people to get upset. All right? How many of you watched the Super Bowl? Okay? Still not over the loss? Okay? Who saw the Coca-Cola commercial? Oh my gosh! Oh, they're singing America the Beautiful, and they're not singing it in the language God created in English. Right? Did you get mad?
I wasn't mad, but I was a little like...
Well, for those who didn't see it, it was America the Beautiful, sung in all these different languages. And they were all, had a Coca-Cola can, a Coca-Cola bottle in it. And, I looked at it and said, Coca-Cola's getting involved in the immigration reform push. And, what happened? But what happens here is that we're in a time period now where we have a major issue of immigration. You have somewhere between 14 and 20 million people who are here that, according to some, are not supposed to be here. And as a result, what should we do with this shadow economy of these people that are doing out there? They're doing what? They're taking our jobs. Okay? The same issue occurred in the 1870s and 1880s, except the people that were coming in large numbers were Irish. Okay? The Irish. And they were coming in, and they didn't have any skills. All right? They did not have a set skill that enabled them to make a certain amount of money. Do we still have delineations like that in society today? If you want somebody to go and work on, if you want somebody to do plumbing in your house, who are you going to call? A plumber. And that plumber, to be able to offer his services, meets certain guidelines. He's taken certain tests, he's got certain skills, and as a result, he gets a certain pay because he has met those guidelines. Are you going to go to a guy that's standing on the street corner and say, hey, my plumbing's broken, I need you to come over to my house and fix it? Are you going to do that? Why not? Probably he doesn't know what he's doing. In a pinch, I could probably fix most of the plumbing in my house. Does that make me a skilled laborer with plumbing? One of the things I love doing is building. I have this really cool fort in the back that I built for my kids. And it is really, really neat, made out of wood. However, am I a carpenter? Would it compare to something that a carpenter could build? No. Why? Because I am an unskilled laborer when it comes to plumbing and woodwork. However, there are groups of people that have been around that have like for carpentry and for plumbing, that rate their own work and then give different certificates and different levels of skills. The problem is with industrialization occurring, in many instances, unskilled workers are being hired for skilled laborers' jobs. And the skilled laborers are not liking this. These high immigration rates means there's more unskilled laborers. There's problems with technology. All of a sudden, there's this little thing that hangs from the top of the factory that puts out light. It's a light bulb. This light bulb means that you can work using machinery past dark, which means instead of having a 10-hour workday, maybe you can work 12 hours. So your hours that you are working have gotten longer, but at the same time, your pay is staying the same. Thanks to the telephone, you can now, if I'm a manager, I can now call up factories all across the state, and I can say, what's going on? How are things going? What's the production rate? What's any major problems you need to tell me about? And I'm not there to see the situation. So the difference, the distance between labor and management is growing. So the management does not know what the laborers are going through. It used to be a laborer worked with a manager. The manager would see what was going on. So what was happening is people are getting farther and farther away from the laborers getting farther and farther away from management, and so the management, being distant, doesn't know what they're going through. So this is going to be lead to the formation of unions. Now, trade unions have existed for some time. They started in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. You had cigar makers who would join together because the quality of the cigars that they were offering, that commanded a certain price, and in order for that quality to be reached, you wanted to make sure that those people knew what they were doing. So they cigar maker unions would judge themselves. My example of carpentry. You start out as an apprentice. Once you finished an apprenticeship, you would become a journeyman. After a journeyman, you would take a certain test that was given by the Carpenters Guild, and then you would be able to be either become like a master. You could take an apprentice of your own. And for each one of those levels, you would be allowed to command a certain price. Been around for a long time. So the goals of these field-specific unions was to join together, measure their own quality to get higher prices. That's what those trade unions were for. When unions started taking off in the United States, employers, understandably, would be upset. Okay? Why? Well, you don't want to work for me for this amount? Why? You want more money? Why? You want to work less but get paid the same? No. As a result, because of the distance between labor, seeing what the conditions are, and so forth, you're going to have a lot of employers start embracing some tactics that could be kind of unethical. But one of the major issues that people are going to be really concerned with is that a lot of these immigrants that are coming into the United States have firsthand knowledge of a different type of system that was developed in the 1850s. And this is known as socialism. Okay? In socialism, the government owns the industry and provides for the people. You take socialism too far and it becomes communism. In 1848, a man by the name of Karl Marx would write the Communist Manifesto, in which he would advocate for the violent overthrow of capitalistic governments, which is ours, and in order to give to the people the control of the economy, and everybody would be equal. Now, I will tell you now, everywhere that communism has been tried, it has failed. Right? When we get to the Cold War, you will see that firsthand. But with these immigrants coming in, a lot of them are going to have communist beliefs, socialist beliefs, and it is going to color the union movement. As a result, capitalistic employers, which all of them are, if you own a company, you're going to be a capitalist, are going to employ certain tactics to try to prevent people who are instigators or trying to negotiate or trying to get a union formed in their organization from being employed. The first is called the blacklist. The blacklist is a list of people that is shared amongst a community that has names of known union members. So if somebody shows up on my door, they want a job, I'll be able to look and say, Spencer Evans, you were over at Carnegie Steelworks and you tried to get a union started over there. I'm not going to interview you because I don't want you. I don't want your kind here. Or they employ what are known as yellow dog contracts. In a yellow dog contract, Tyler wants to come work with me, and in order to work with me, I give him a contract that says you will never join a union while you work for me. If you do, it is grounds for immediate dismissal. All right? It's a yellow dog contract. But that's not going to stop this from occurring. Stop these organizations from occurring. The first try is going to be the National Labor Union. It's going to be created in 1866, and it's going to last to 1873. Its goal that it would collectively work for an 8-hour day. It worked to regulate factories. What does that mean? Well, factories were notorious at this time for employing women and children. And in many instances, the nice thing about women and children being employed is that women have smaller and children have smaller hands than men. As a result, their hands can get into machinery easier and pull out broken parts, things that have fallen into the machines, and then get them going back again. And what happens when that occurs? Probably lose the hand. My daughter, my eldest daughter, several years ago was really big into American Girl dolls. And there was this one American Girl doll that was 1900s, 1890s. I can't remember her name. I don't think it was Molly, but it was Samantha. I think it was Samantha. And they had a video for her, and she was the rich girl that had a servant that lived with her, and the servant had a daughter, and the daughter was her age, so they were best of friends, and then the servant dies, and the child goes to an orphanage to get sold out to a sweatshop, which is basically building these huge textile mills. All right, and these children were paid pennies to sew. And this one scene where Samantha goes with her dad to find this girl so they can adopt her, because that's the ultimate goal of, I guess, American Girl movies, is they show this boy they show all these kids that are sewing, and this boy falls asleep. And as he's doing the threads, he's going like this, he falls asleep, and he goes off his hand. The needle goes up his hand, and it sews through his hand. And they show, of course, it's mean, but it's somewhat historical. The factory owner comes down and says, "What happened? What happened? What happened? Why is everything stopped?" He says, "Well, this boy hurt himself." He's like, take him outside. So take him outside, just throw him out. He's out of work. They bring another boy and just put him in there. He continues to work, and then he starts back up. It's an example of how abusive the situation was. Hyperbolized, most likely. But they wanted regulation and things like that. Obviously, the boy needed medical attention, and he just got thrown out on the job. And they also worked for arbitration of labor disputes. Arbitration of labor disputes. Now, arbitration, whenever you have an arbiter come in, it is a third party to a disagreement. And basically what happens is he said, she said, and then you have somebody that sits right here, and they listen, and they try to come up with a fair deal. This is the deal, this is what it is, this is what we're going to agree on, and any labor dispute will go to an arbiter. That's what they tried to push for. Now, 1873. What happens in 1873 that could spell the demise of this organization? Nope. What occurs in 1873? We have the panic. The Depression hits. If you are fighting to keep your job, how big are you going to be? How concerned are you going to be with working for an 8-hour day, trying to push for an 8-hour day? You're not, because you're trying to feed your family. And if you have to work 10 hours a day for the same pay, that's fine, because it's not going to be, this is not that big of a deal for you at the time if you're trying to survive. So this comes to an end. Now, in the 70s, while that is happening, you're going to have basically a general disorder. And you're going to have some really interesting things happen. In Pennsylvania, a secret group of Irish immigrants is going to join together and call themselves the Molly Maguires. The Molly Maguires are going to try to get trying to get better working conditions, higher pay, and a lower amount of work per day. All right? And the way they do it is by kidnapping their managers and sometimes killing their managers. Well, I don't know about you, but I've never seen anybody get a raise by killing their boss. It usually doesn't happen. Only place I know where you can get a new job by killing your boss is in Mexico, and it's usually killing the president so you can become the new president. As we'll see when we get to the Mexican Revolution in 1910. In 1877, the Philadelphia and the Reading Railroad are going to cut pay twice since 1873. This would cause the workers of these two railroads to riot and destroy quite a bit of federal property in Pennsylvania. Eventually, the United States Army would be sent in to break it up. Also in 1877, a man by the name of Dennis Kearney is going to create the Working Man's Party of California. See, Dennis Kearney did not like the fact that the Chinese were immigrating in large numbers to California and then taking their jobs. However, instead of killing people, Kearney and his group are going to organize and run candidates for state elections. They are going to win enough of these state elections to craft a new constitution that limits how many Chinese are allowed to immigrate. Unfortunately for them, the Supreme Court would rule that section of their Constitution unconstitutional because who handles immigration in the United States? The federal government handles immigration in the United States. Now, in 1878, there would be another attempt to organize a union. And this is going to occur nationwide. And the group that does it is the Knights of Labor. It exists 1878 to 1886. One of the big problems that they have right off the bat is that there are no qualifications for membership. You don't have to have the skill. They took skilled and unskilled workers equally. They worked for a 6-hour day. An 8-hour day. That'd be nice, a 6-hour day. They wanted more time off. And like the Grange before them, they would create cooperatives. They would be very successful very early in the organization. Did you pull it back down?
Yeah.
Okay. They'd be very successful very early in their life, and they would reach a maximum number of 700,000 members. That's pretty good. What's the problem with going from nothing to 700,000 overnight, almost? You're not ready. The infrastructure is not there. The infrastructure is not there, and it fragments. to make matters worse, it's hard to negotiate collectively when you are trying to get a certain pay for skilled laborers and unskilled laborers. If the only thing you can do is push a broom, should you get paid the same amount as a master carpenter? Some people are going to say yes. But you shouldn't. That's not how a capitalistic system works. You work harder, the more money you make, right? That's how it's supposed to work. So this was a problem because they were trying to collectively bargain for skilled workers at the same time, unskilled workers. Another problem is since they allowed anyone in, a large percentage of the new people that flooded the Knights of Labor were foreign immigrants. Those same foreign immigrants who brought with them this radical belief in socialism and overthrowing the government. Eventually, this organization would come to an end when a peaceful demonstration that they are taking part of in 1886 in Chicago at Haymarket Square turns into a riot. Someone not associated with the Knights of Labor is going to throw a bomb into a group of police officers that were there making sure that it was a peaceful demonstration. It killed 8 police officers and at least 7 other people. We think it's more than that, but we don't know because what happens is if somebody's injured at that time period, it's going to be the same thing in Pearl Harbor, is that people take the injured home where they died. It's not reported. But, rightfully or wrongfully, the Haymarket riot is going to be attributed to the Knights of Labor, and it spells the doom for that organization. So the third tribe is the American Federation of Labor. It is under the control of Samuel Gompers. He's going to learn from the mistakes of the previous organizations and only allows skilled workers to become members. Instead of trying to be violent, trying to overthrow the government, or trying to use strikes, they decide that strikes should be used very rarely. Strikes and boycotts. You know what I'm using these words, I probably should. You know what a strike is? Strike is when people who are workers there do not work. They just stand outside and they usually have signs, we're not going to work until we get better pay, or this. A boycott is refusing to go to a company that or use their service. So they use strikes and boycotts as last resorts. They employed collective bargaining, and when a strike was called, they had set aside these massive war chests that each member contributed to, so that when a strike was called and you're out there picketing your place of employment, you're not getting to work, right? So if you're not getting to work, you're not getting paid. And if you're not getting paid, your family's not feeding your family. That's when the war chest comes in. The war chest would help you feed your family during this time. There are going to be some strikes that occur that I can't remember if it puts it in this, the textbook puts it in this chapter or the next, but since we were talking about labor unions, we're going to talk about it now, that are going to be very big in the early 1890s, that really kind of showcase what can happen with strikes. The Homestead Strike of 1892 involves Andrew Carnegie's Steel Company, the Carnegie Steel Company, and the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers. See, what has happened is Carnegie has cut the rate of pay for the steel workers. The way they got paid on their contract was they were paid a certain amount for each completed piece of iron. Okay? They're paid piecework. As a result, he cuts their pay, and because of that, the laborers strike. This strike would last 5 months. Eventually, Carnegie would hire the Pinkerton Detective Agency to go in and beat up the strikers. The strike broken, they would return to work, or he found other people to pay to work. Another one occurs in 1894, and it is the Pullman strike. The Pullman strike involves George Pullman's Pullman car. You remember that car we talked about? It's a sleeping car. And the American Railway Union. American Railway Union is led by Eugene V. Debs. Eugene V. Debs is a socialist, and he is a man that is going to be thrown into jail numerous times, and also is eventually going to run for president about 2 times, I think. 5 times? 2 times he actually may have gotten some serious votes. That's right. Last time he ran, he was still in prison. But the Pullman strike involves the American Railway Union not wanting to deal with Pullman because he's not meeting their demands. So all of the American Railway Union members decide at a certain day, at a certain time, to pull the pins that connect Pullman cars to their trains. Hopefully nobody's going up a hill when this happens, because then the train would just, Pullman cars would just go to the bottom and probably crash. But what happens is once the Pullman cars are separated from the trains, they refuse to touch them. Now, if I'm driving down the road today and I'm on a road, and there's a semi in front of me that has come to a stop, what can I do? I can go around it. What if you're a train and there's a train car in front of you? You can't go around it. What happens is in Illinois, commerce comes to a stop because all the Pullman cars have been separated from the trains. They can't do anything about it. Eventually, Grover Cleveland, the president, is going to intervene and send the army in. The army is going to go in and remove all the Pullman cars from the tracks. Now, today, you'd be like, okay, good, I'm glad he did it. Back then, nothing like that had ever been done before. And the president caught a lot of flack for this because he was violating what a lot of people considered was a state issue. Eventually, his answer is that, yes, it is a state issue, but it is also violating, it is also preventing the federal government from completing one of its assigned tasks. And that is, what? Well, give me, yeah, it's interstate commerce, but what? Delivery of the mail. Because that was how mail was delivered at the time, and because of these Pullman cars taking up the tracks, mail was not being delivered. So he said that took a higher precedent than the American Railways Union getting what they wanted. Now this brings us to the election of 1892. In the election of 1892, the Republicans are very happy with Benjamin Harrison. Why? Because he is a big business president. He does everything that they want him to, and as a result, they nominate him for a second term. On the other hand, you have the Democrats, who are not happy with the fact that their candidate, Grover Cleveland, in the last election in 1888, lost the electoral vote, but won the popular vote. As a result, they nominate him again. This time, Grover Cleveland wins the popular and the electoral vote and becomes the 26th President of the United States. Grover Cleveland is the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. 24 and 26. That's an excellent test question if I ever heard one. All right. You see your pen? Pens up. Those of you who are bothering to take notes. Draw a line at the end of this spot. Exam ends here. That is where the exam ends.